to the Charter School Connection podcast. I just had an amazing podcast interview with Dr. Denise Espania. She is out with the Mālama Honua Public Charter School as the director. She's doing some really cool things, and she put an interesting twist on our conversation where I honestly didn't think it was going to go this way, but we just talked about Western education and how she really believes in creating an education where students take care of the earth, and they kind of have an educational experience that goes a little bit deeper than just standardized test scores. Super interesting, and I would love to go visit this school in person. It's in a beautiful location. They're doing awesome things. They're trying to find creative ways to fund a single facility for their K through 8 charter school. Anyways, I think you'd get a really good kick just from listening to this podcast episode, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks. Denise, thank you so much for joining me today for the Charter School Connection podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to engage in our conversation.
Yeah, this is really cool. As we were talking just before we started recording, I told you this is my first time I've talked with any charter school in Hawaii. I'm not sure if any of the other hosts of this has done this before, but so I'm really excited to kind of get an idea of what the environment's like out there in Hawaii for charter schools and see what you all are doing for your charter school. So you are the school director for the Mālama Honua Public Charter School.
Yes.
It's a K through 8 charter. And is it on Maui?
It's on Oahu. So we're in Waimānalo, so that main island of Honolulu. Honolulu is on Oahu, and then Waimānalo is outside of Honolulu.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I looked at it on a map and it looks like you're on the East Coast. Is that correct?
Correct.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to learn about your school, but before we dive into your school and what makes it special and unique, I just want to learn a little bit more about you and your background. Could you tell me like how you got involved in education, how you got involved with this charter school?
Yeah, I'd love to. So just very quickly, as a brand new elementary school teacher, I started with, those, as everybody does, right? Your first year teaching, and you get the class that nobody wants, right? It's the one that the kids tell you, nobody wants to be here. I've gone through tons of subs. The teachers tell you, you know what? Nobody wants that class, so good luck. And so, of course, for me, going into that classroom, I think the most important lesson that I learned was not only getting over your fear and excitement all at the same time, but is an importance of pilina. So in Hawaiian, pilina is very basically relationships, the importance of building relationships with your students and your families. And as everybody remembers as a first year teacher, it's hard. It's super hard that you don't really know, and you probably have not done the best job that you could have done now in hindsight. But I think that most important lesson of building relationships is something that stuck with me. And because you build that relationship with students, you want what's best for them. And so that led me into my next phase, which is go back to school, because I'm definitely not doing as best as I could for the students that I served. And I went into special education. And then as a special education teacher, I realized, oh my gosh, this is actually worse than I thought. I need more learning. I need more education, because what I realized as a special education teacher is that I can build these relationships with students, and I get to know them, and I know them on an individual basis. When you build these relationships with students and make the learning relevant to them and meet them where they're at, schooling becomes enjoyable, it becomes relevant, it becomes powerful. And as you learn more, you realize that our Western education system is replicating colonization practices and is actually really hurtful. And so in my younger years, I realized, okay, you know what? If you go back to school, you can find the answer. So I went back to school again and further confirmed what I realized as I was learning. And at the same time as I was going back to school, I met an amazing man, and his name was Robert Witt. And Robert was in charge of the independent schools in Hawaii, and he and someone named Nainoa Thompson, who is an iconic figure in Hawaii and is the president of the Polynesian Voyaging Society. So I have the executive director for independent schools in Hawaii and this iconic figure, Nainoa Thompson, who is in charge of the Polynesian Voyaging Society, who was the organization that brought back Hokulea, which is our iconic Native Hawaiian voyaging canoe, who in 1975 is that launch of that canoe is responsible, one of the things that are responsible for the Hawaiian Renaissance. So I have these two amazing educational leaders that want to build a school. And I'm learning all about the injustices of education and how we need to do better and be better for our next generation of learners in schools. And then I get to work with these amazing men who really want to relook at how we look at schooling and the importance of Native Hawaiian education. And so it was just kind of this perfect intersection for me where I get to dream with these amazing educators, education being traditional education with Robert, and then Native Hawaiian culture-based education with Nainoa, who one is trained educator and the other is real life educator, and educational leaders in their own right, to say, how do we look at schools that value where students come from, value their culture, value language, recognize that Western education is just another form of perpetuating colonization practices. How do we look at schools in a different way? And so that kind of welcomed me into this realm of charter schools, and specifically Native Hawaiian education and Native Hawaiian charter schools, which we at Mālama Honua opened in 2014 with the voyage. Hokulea, like I said, the voyaging canoe took off around the world in 2014 to Mālama, which is to care for, Honua, the earth, and visit different places around the world, learning about how are other people taking care of the earth? How are we bridging our island earth by taking this iconic vessel, this canoe that was built as a part of the Hawaiian Renaissance, reclaiming education and language, and really sail without traditional GPS navigation, but sail as our ancestors did, using the moon and the stars and the sun and the ocean currents to circumnavigate the globe, something that hadn't been done in our lifetimes. Really focusing on this idea of taking care of the earth and the importance of education. So the school in 2014 is now joining the Native Hawaiian education movement that started had started 20 years before the school had opened, saying, how do we take this iconic voyage, which nobody had really done before, and was very dangerous to try to take an indigenous vessel that used the stars and the moon and the currents around the world into places there's piracy, there's unknown storms, unknown water currents, but using the brilliance of ancestors to be able to make this voyage, making a statement of the importance of taking care of our earth and the importance of looking backwards at indigenous knowledge in order to guide us moving forward. So the school really was to take this voyage, because one day it would end, which it did. They circumnavigated the globe successfully, creating this lay around the world. How do you take those values and change education? And so the school was always meant as a small pilot to say, how do you perpetuate these values of the voyage in creating a school and an education system, community that is values based, that recognizes the importance of language and culture, and that really brings us all together in saying that the earth is just one island in the universe. And we have a saying, he va'a, he moku, he moku, he va'a. The island is the canoe, and the canoe is the island. That if we can all begin to understand that the island has limited resources in the vast ocean, and the va'a, the the boat, is the canoe, is a limited island of resources in this vast ocean. The island, the honua, is a limited, finite resources in the sea of space. All of these lessons are so, so, so important for our students and our people, not just our students, but our people, to understand that we need to take care of those limited resources, which inclusive of your crew, the people. So our school is about, yes, taking care of the earth. Our school is about the importance of knowing who you are and where you come from. Our school is also about the importance of knowing where you're headed, that we want our students to embody this navigation, Nalavena Ho'okele, in charting their course forward with understanding their kuleana, their responsibility to Mālama, to care for their honua, their small little va'a that also represents the larger island and community, which also represents the island earth, and that every single decision they make needs to be grounded in those values and that mindset. So from my background in education, I just was able to be in the right place at the right time, to be with some amazing, amazing people and mentors, and visionaries around education, to see that, okay, that first naive teacher that was just like, oh, you just have to build Pilina, you have to build relationships. That's important. To, nope, you've got to have a better understanding of where every student is at and build that specially designed instructional plan to, oh my goodness, I can't be replicating these colonization practices in my education into building a school that teachers want to be a part of, families want to be a part of, students want to be a part of, because they see this larger vision of Mālama Honua.
Whoa, Denise, that is so incredible. Wow, now I feel silly because before I'm like, hey, these podcasts usually last about 20 minutes. I feel like to cover in depth and do justice at all the topics you're talking about, this would require like a 7-part, like hour each.
No, we want to keep it to 20 minutes. Keep it short.
But I have so many questions now. Okay, so I guess I'll try to keep it brief. But so first of all, I'm just intrigued. I want to know, like, if you could just give a couple of the examples of like how you noticed like colonization being a theme with Western education, and kind of like what caught your attention with that specifically. And then the follow-up question to that is, what does Mālama Honua do to like counteract that, and to like what are you doing uniquely with your students?
Mm-hmm. I think, and this is just based on my experience and then some of the research that I've read. At first, as a naive teacher, really, it was, why is it that there are so many Native Hawaiian men? Or why is it a disrepresentation of Native Hawaiians in a Hawaiian, in Hawaii, that are in special education? Like, how can that be? And then as you get to know them, they're absolutely brilliant people, brilliant young men and women. And but they were told that they are not successful, that they can't do school. And so that in itself is a colonizing practice, right? To say that you can't be successful. When you look back in history, Native Hawaiians are the most literate historically in the world throughout history. They took an outside, in English, and were able to create newspapers, put their oral language into writing. 98% men and women were literate. You can't have a culture like that. Hawaii was the first place to get electricity before the White House. You can't have leaders and a people and then now be in a place a few generations later where you have the highest incarceration rate. You have kids who are outnumbering the number of students in special education. I mean, those are literal examples of replications of injustice. And it's because you value standardized test scores, which in Hawaii, you're asking somebody to take a test about snow. We don't have snow. We have it at the very top of Mauna Kea. That's it. To talk about raccoons and squirrels, which I lived on the continent, so I figured out what they were, or the changing of colors of leaves. Like you're asking them to take tests that are not meaningful or relevant. And I'm not saying that just for Hawaii either, right? When you look at who's replicating and able to stay in power, it's those who have those connections with those assessments. And so for us at Mālama Honua, it's about, is reading, writing, and math important? Absolutely. Because both in order to navigate today's world, but also historically, we know Native Hawaiians are academics. And so, yes, you do need to have all of that. You need to be able to present your learning. You need to be able to justify with evidence. You need to be able to make connections past, present, and into the future. Those are all important. And standardized test scores are not always the best way, or actually are not the best way to judge success. And so if we're looking at what makes us different and unique, it's that we start with the purpose first. Our students are going out and learning about sailing and navigation. They are being asked to connect back with the power of their ancestors and not be disconnected from language and practices. And from there, ask that essential question about Mālama Honua, that their education and their advocacy serves more than just themselves and their families, but they're advocating for something bigger and better. And so our students from kindergarten are asked, yes, we do the reading, writing, math. We are showing growth in our areas of assessment. However, what we start with is that why. Remember, and I talked about Robert and Nainoa and looking at education in a different lens. The why is because we bring our babies out to the ocean and we ask the kindergarteners to learn about plankton, to learn about the coral reef, to give back and actually do some beach cleanups and learn about, like, as they sift through the sand, what are all these little colored pieces? Well, those are microplastics. And plastics that are polluting our oceans means that our plankton can't get their breaths, because they learn from a very early age that plankton is allowing us to get oxygen into our world. And if we're covering it with plastic, then we're killing out our plankton. And so they learn and now want to read and learn more and listen to speakers and at kindergarten, because they went down to the beach. They're learning about the importance of our coral. They're learning about coral bleaching. They're learning about our animals that are getting wrapped up in plastics. And now they want to learn more. So they want to read. They have a reason to do math. They have a reason to write and be able to speak clearly, to advocate for our oceans and their coral reefs. From kindergarten all the way up through when we finish with them in 8th grade, they start first with that why. They see that our kupuna, our ancestors, said it's important to take care of your coral reefs. It's important to take care of your waterways. It's important to make sure that you have, you understand how to plant, how to harvest, how to work with Aina, because the Aina is the land, is a chief, and we're their servants. So we better figure it out. And they understand that by learning from the past, it impacts their current and how they can currently address the challenges facing them now and into the future. And so if I were to say what makes us unique, and not just Mālama Honua, but Native Hawaiian education and many Indigenous education, is that we find that balance, that reading, writing, and math becomes just a tool for them to accomplish their greater kuleana, their greater responsibility, which is to care for and give back to their earth and their community.
Man, that's amazing. That's so cool. Wow, Denise, that's extremely impressive. And yeah, your students are lucky to have an education like that, something that really, you know, sticks with them and they can carry forward. So it's awesome that there's been this charter school movement. You've been able to try to provide an education that tries to go a little bit more profound than just standardized testing, which is great. And I think a lot of people can get behind that. I'm also interested in just like your geographic location and your current situation. I know I looked at the location and it's beautiful. You're just a rock's throw from the beach. That's amazing. Would you mind just telling me kind of a little bit more about your physical property of your school and what you're trying to do with your facilities out there?
Yeah, thank you for asking. In Hawaii, charter schools don't have equitable funding. And one of the ways we don't have equitable funding is that we don't have, we're not given land or a facility. So we have to find our own facility. And so what we've been doing is each time we grow and increase the grade level, we're at the back of a church when we first opened. Then we used another church, the back of their church. And then now we're using a community center. And then we have another community center. So Native Hawaiian Homes is allowing us to use a space. We have the back of a church for another space. And then we also have a community partner that we're working with to now, with the state, create a fundraising opportunity. We have to engage in a capital campaign and to actually build a school for ourselves, in addition to making sure we run the school. So that's why we also have to fundraise to create our own school, which it's a give and take, right? With a charter, we're able to have that autonomy that allows us to do teaching and learning and assessment in our own way. But that also means then that we have to try to get our own funding in order to create our own school building, and our students deserve it. As a Native Hawaiian charter school, predominantly Native Hawaiian, our population, we're a title school. Our students deserve anything that an independent school or a more affluent school in another affluent area can provide them. And we spend a lot of times learning outdoors. But it is good to have a clean and safe and secure location where we can all be together as well. And so that's kind of as we move forward, we would like to be in one location. And so making sure that our community, who has been extremely supportive, but funders understand as well that when you fund to bring us all together, we're just empowering a different way of looking at education. And we would argue a better way of looking at education, where we are creating environments where students are navigating their future, not only for themselves, but to uplift their community. And we can only do even more and support more of our students as well as our community by being in one location.
I mean, yeah, that sounds simply amazing. Like, why wouldn't you want to fund some place where Native Hawaiians feel empowered, where you focus on caring for the earth, which we all have to share and live on, and then just providing more opportunities, because we all know that not one type of school applies well to every single kind of student. And so like just diversifying and creating new opportunities, I mean, it's just amazing. So, I mean, to close, I just kind of wanted to give you the floor. Is there any lessons learned that you would like to share, or Just anything that you would like to leave for our listeners. I'd say the majority of our listeners don't know much about Hawaii, but is there anything that you would like to just leave the podcast on?
I think going back to the very beginning, the importance of pilina and relationships. That is probably the singular most important lesson that I take away, that it's so important to build relationships with your children that you serve, the families that you serve, and the communities that you serve. That it's so easy nowadays to be so disjointed and compartmentalized. And the more opportunities that we have to build across cultures, across oceans, in and within your classroom to make those connections, the stronger education is going to be, and the more able we are to provide learning opportunities that will not only uplift our own communities, but then because you're building relationships and making these connections, just like with you guys, and your podcast, the more powerful and empowered we are. So I just want to thank you so much for providing me this opportunity, and just encourage people to despite all the craziness, right? Schooling is always so busy, to find times to build connections, whether it's within your own school and just within your classroom, but reach out to other people in your community. The community is such an amazing resource for us that without them, we wouldn't be successful. And so reaching out across now the internet to different people who want to listen in and learn is another opportunity too. So I'm excited to continue my network by staying and being involved with you guys.
Oh, man. Well, that's awesome, Denise. Thank you so much for the compliment. And it's been such a pleasure getting to know you and more about your school and what you're doing out in Hawaii. Yeah, we definitely have to stay in touch. And I'm already thinking of scheduling you for a second podcast because I feel like we just barely scratched the surface. And I feel like there's so much more to cover. But thank you so much for being on our podcast. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the new year.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much for reaching out and making time to talk story with me as well. And I'm excited to be able to go and listen and learn.